Hi everyone, this is just a quick presentation about the new GDPR training. Now I know a lot of you have already had sessions with me over the last couple of weeks, but unfortunately some of you have been on holiday or had allocated days off or on leave or whatever. So I thought it might be good to run over these very brief slides about the new process that kicks in on May the 25th. Now, if you're watching this before May the 25th or watching this after May the 25th, the same rules and changes apply. So it is in your best interest to obviously watch this video, go over the process with me, and if you've got any questions, don't hesitate to ask by email or phone immediately after you've watched this. Now, this is a legal requirement. It's nothing that we've introduced for Inchcape or Volkswagen. It's a new government regulation, and you have to watch this video, and you also have to reply back and fill in a form to say you understand the new changes and the new regulations that are taking place. So without further ado, I'm going to click on the first slide and explain very briefly what GDPR is. It stands for General Data Protection Regulation, and as I mentioned before, it kicks in on the 25th of May. It basically overtakes the old Data Protection Act of 1998. So 20 years ago was a very different workplace, and obviously with the digital era we're in now, this is long overdue. So this is going to be the new law that takes place. The biggest area I want you to focus on is the bottom section here about the failure to comply. 4% of annual worldwide turnover for Inchcape is a serious amount of money, and it's a figure. So there's no grey area with this. We have to be completely compliant. And this is what these slides are about, and obviously how our processes work. Next slide is basically just summarising the new enhanced rights for customers. So I'm going to very quickly go through this with you now. To be forgotten about basically means customers are allowed to be completely removed from our database. So if they do come in, or they ring up, or they verbally or by email ask you to be completely removed, we have to adhere to that request. The way we do that, we've got a few contacts at the very end of this presentation, but of course if you're ever confused or need clarification, just email me the request from the customer, and I can get the ball rolling and get the customer removed off our database. Restriction of data. So obviously customers may or may not be aware, at times we use their data for marketing or VIP events, and we also use companies like Rhino and Chameleon, who are classed as third parties. Now at times customers aren't happy about that, and obviously if they ask questions about that and they want their data to be restricted, we have to ensure that we adhere to that request. And again, if that's the case, you simply inform me or the contacts at the very end, and we can do that accordingly. The correct data then, obviously this is about ensuring we collect correct email, phone, postal information, correct title, name, and ensure that we do that within our systems. That also links with ensuring that is always remains the correct data. So for instance, we're not amending emails unnecessarily and putting in incorrect information in our systems. So that's very important. Withdrawing consent. So that's where obviously they tell us they don't want to be used for marketing. So they may want, they may be happy to receive service and MOT reminders, but not obviously be included in any sales marketing. Complaining to authorities. So this is where obviously they will be aware of who to complain to. The new GDPR regulations in the public domain already, so they'll know who to contact. And I've already witnessed a number of radio advertisements. It's all on social media. You'll probably know yourself, you're getting emails about recommissioning from various companies. So customers will be aware of who to complain to. Seeking remedies and compensation, that probably goes hand in hand with complaining to authorities. They'll know that there is potential areas of compensation if we've taken the contact to them or outside of their consent, as it mentions here on the slide. So again, customers will be aware of how to seek remedies and compensation. The rights of access to data, the SARS request, as it's called, that's where customers are allowed to come in, be it physically, verbally, or obviously write and ask for any data we have on them. So, job cards, order forms, any carriage information that we have on them, anything on iAlive. So you name it, they're allowed to ask for it. And that is a free service as of May the 25th. So again, you may or may not see a spike in requests for that sort of thing. Again, when you get it, we can't ignore it. We have to ensure that we adhere to the request from the customer. And there will be another slide in a couple of minutes about the SARS request in a little bit more detail. The port data, that's where we port data or porting data. Doesn't really happen in our industry, it's more in the financial industry, but it's the transparency of information. So if a customer wants their information passed to another company or even another industry, that can happen as of May the 25th. Again, just to outline what it says on the slide, the porting data to another company if they decide to take their business elsewhere. So for instance, if they change banks, that's the best example of that, and their information gets passed to another bank. But it could potentially happen within, BMW or Mercedes across the VW, but it shouldn't happen as much as it does in other industries. Next slide. What it means for us as Inchcape employees or specifically sales employees. In terms of the process, we'll go over that in a couple of minutes. But the crucial aspect of this is, if you see the field set to denied within iAlive or Kerridge, under no circumstances are you allowed to contact the customer by that interaction. That is the crucial bit to this. There is no grey area. If it says denied, we cannot contact them. If we do, it's classed as a breach, and that's where the potential fine and penalisation kicks in. Now, inquiries that come through the web lead system or the OEM system, we need to re-permission them from our side. So customers at times, we may have already told Volkswagen they want to be opted out. We also need to ensure they're aware that we have a separate entity when it comes to our systems as well. And we give them separate consent to communicate via Inchcape. So that's very, very important as well. Now, what the exec needs to get into the habit of doing, when a customer comes into the business or rings up the business and they're after a car, we have to check their consents and their permissions. And if they are opted out, explain that to the customer at the time, because that's the only opportunity we will get to update that customer. So if they are opted out of phone and you're trying to source them a car, you need to explain to the customer that it makes the whole process more difficult for us. So hopefully then the customer is more aligned to re-permissioning their permissions. If they're aware that we contact them by email about MOT and service reminders, about recall information, and it's not about sending them junk mail or sending them information to third parties or anything like that, they will be more inclined to then change their preferences, hopefully. However, you can't do that on behalf of the customer. The customer must give consent. That's very, very important. Next slide then. How to record a consent. So obviously you should all be aware of the iAlive platform and obviously this section of it. It's got the disclaimer that the customer can read. They can also check their information is correct. And of course, they can then update their full permissions of post, SMS, email and telephone. Now, if you're not doing this already, pass the iPad to the customer to read and record their own consent. That is an indirect way of them obviously agreeing to what the information that's been put on this section here. They can read the disclaimer and obviously then they can decide there and then how they want to be contacted. Just so you know, this obviously pushes information into Kerridge once you click save or sync, and it also pulls information out of Kerridge if you use the global facility in iAlive. So both sides of it are updated automatically. That will speak to the Kerridge record, which you can see here. So the data protection tab within Kerridge is where this information is stored and where this information is updated. So the SMS post, email and phone is all updated in this section. You have a traffic light system in Kerridge as well. So where the customer name is at the top, on the left-hand side, you've got a little traffic light icon. And that's obviously a quick reference point to tell you whether or not your customer has updated their permissions accordingly. So if you see it in green, it means all 4 permissions are set to agreed, so you can contact them by any way you want to. If it's set to amber, it means it needs a little bit more checking because 1 or 2 of the permissions may be set to denied and you need to double check that. And if it's set to red, that's where all 4 permissions are set to denied. And obviously there you will have concerns, and that's where you're not able to contact the customer going forward. So that's where you will have to, if you are face-to-face with the customer, re-permission them. And of course, if they're still sensitive enough to opt out of a certain method, you ensure that it's set to denied. That's very, very important because that's what the customer wants. It's the law. It's not our choice. As I said at the very beginning of this very brief training, we have to ensure that we do not alter customers' data without their knowledge or their consent. That is the legal obligation we have. It has to be the customer's choice. And we also have reports within Kerridge to check trends in data changing or amendments. So there's no email deletions or email amendments without the customer consent. That's very, very important. And obviously, if that does happen, your manager will be aware of the potential implications of that, and it's completely illegal. So you cannot do that going forward. Now, this is a relation to showroom standards and I suppose common sense within the showroom and protecting customers' data. So it is the responsibility of everyone within the showroom, that sales and service staff. So obviously you've got to be careful with personal data within the showroom and how it could identify a particular customer or individual. So things like name, address, phone number and email, the customers' information should not be lying around the showroom. So pieces of paper with customer information on it, that's strictly prohibited. Deal files around the showroom should be stored and locked away, and I believe they are going to be pushed to an electronic version in the near future as well. Prospecting lists, no longer will we provide you with a list of customers on an Excel spreadsheet with name, phone, email, etc. You will only receive the Kerridge number and potentially the customer name for you to contact. Telephone CRDs, if they are used, should be fed into a system ASAP and then destroyed by the shredders you have within the showroom or the office. You should never share your password with anyone, be it Kerridge or iLab or anything else for that matter, because obviously if someone does breach GDPR under your name, you are responsible for that breach. And in terms of information on security and breaching, you'll get plenty of information in the next few weeks if you've not already got that. Next slide. What to do then if there is a data breach? If the worst case scenario happens and a breach occurs within the showroom, such as a deal file going missing or a prospecting list going missing, sending an email to the wrong person or sending a group email without using BCC or blind copy. If you want more information about blind copy, give me a shout. You need to firstly not ignore it. That's the most crucial bit to this. If you do feel a breach has happened, inform me or the lady here, Jodie Lee, or your line manager ASAP, and then we can contact the customer and investigate accordingly about the breach. If you're unsure, ask your line manager or ask me directly, and we can obviously guide you and answer any questions. And you should receive a formal policy and process about all of this well before the end of May. If you're looking at this after May and you haven't got the formal policy and process, ask for it, and we can give that to you. The final slide I want to show you is the SARS request, which I've touched on before, where customers can come in and ask for any details or information we have about them. It may increase, some of these requests may increase because of this facility being available for customers. We have to reply back to the customer by an official letter or statement. So, if they want an invoice or a job card, we have to reply and say we are complying with that request within 1 month. Hence the importance of not forgetting about this. The sooner you get these requests in, the sooner you inform the powers that be, we can get the customer's information sent over to them. The biggest complaint about this sort of thing is where it's mishandled. So, as I say, inform us immediately and we should have no problems with this. And if you're unsure about anything I've talked about in this presentation, err on the side of caution. Contact me or contact your line manager and ask the question. There's no point taking a risk or a gamble with this sort of thing going forward. The final slide I want to show you is obviously some contact information. You've got my email, which you should all be aware of. You've got Jodie, who's based in compliance, and you've also got the removal request email if you do get any requests come through by email or by writing. Give me a shout if you need any more assistance. If you've got any questions, drop me an email or a phone call, and I'd be happy to assist. Thanks very much.